Okay, council met in closed session. I'll now look to the deputy clerk to provide a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, council met in closed session pursuant to exemptions under Section 239 of the Municipal Act and received information respecting 2 litigation matters.
Thank you. I'll now ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, we would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, please note that these meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. Our next regular meeting of council is Tuesday, October 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Are there any announcements or remarks from members of council? Seeing none. Okay, we're going to move into the adoption of the previous council minutes. Are there any comments, corrections for the draft minutes listed on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I have a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 10th, 2024 be adopted as circulated. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor McCullen, Councilor Gilmore, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We have no public meetings this evening, and we have no delegations this evening. So I'm going to move into the consent agenda. We don't have anything also on the consent agenda this evening, so I'm going to move right into the staff reports. First one, drainage staff reports, the memorandum respecting the partial abandonment of Biederman Drain. Mr. Jemison, can you please provide a brief overview of your memo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So the memo summarizes the proceedings of the Drainage Act that we followed after council's direction at the last meeting. So Township received a request for abandoning the most upstream portion of the Biederman Drain, and following the Drainage Act, we've received no appeals. So the next step is to pass the bylaw. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. So I have a motion that the memorandum respecting the partial abandonment of the Biederman Drain be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Van Fleet, Councilor McClellan. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Going to move into Public Works staff reports. PWSR 013-2024, respecting the 2024 bridge inspection results and update. Mr. Nan, can you please provide a brief overview of your report?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you is Public Works Staff Report 013-2024 regarding 2024 municipal bridge culvert inspection. As indicated in the report, we inspected 14 bridges solely owned by the Township of Wainfleet, and 2 locations with dual ownership with West Lincoln were inspected by West Lincoln. Also noted in the report, staff are currently working with engineering firms to update multiple municipal drain reports. As these reports are updated, the Township may identify additional culverts that span 3 meters or greater, and will be required to be included in future bridge and culvert inspections. Each structure has been given a priority rating and priority ranking summary spreadsheet of the rehabilitation replacement needs have been prioritized according to the following categories: now, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and adequate. In addition to the priority rankings, the structures are classified with a general overall condition rating and corresponding bridge Condition Index. The graph included in the report indicates the township currently identifies 3 structures in poor condition, 1 very good condition, 5 in good condition, and 7 in fair condition. As council is aware, the report no longer includes Shields Road Bridge. The engineering firm has noted an increase in approximately 1% in total costs from the 2022 appraisal to the 2024 appraisal. These cost increases are general increases in construction costs, as well as new recommendations to replace the Zion Road CSP culvert. The Zion Bridge, number 13, which is rated as poor, is a rigid frame bridge, is currently under review, or currently was under review with the Ellsworth Municipal Drain Project. The drain is currently being updated under Section 7A of the Drainage Act, and the engineering firm have included the removal of this structure and replacing it with a culvert, similar to what we did on Gents Road. And it'll be captured, and it was captured in the budget submission in 2023. The engineers have also included a structural assessment management cost forecast for your reference. The report is for information purposes, and future project details will be included for council's consideration as part of our future budget deliberations. I'm available for any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Nan. So I have a motion that the report PWSR 13-2024 respecting the submission of the 2024 Municipal Bridge and Culvert Inspection Report be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan? Councilor Gilmore? Any discussion? Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Nan, on page number 5 of 8 of the report, we have 44% that are in fair shape. I'll give you a minute to get to that. Okay, so my question to you is, so they're in fair. Is there anything we can do now instead of leaving them to just going downhill, that we can get those up to good? Because we know the 3 that are in poor. If we go by Gents as an example, we milked them for 10 years before we replaced it. And I'm not suggesting we do that ever again. But I would much rather spend some good money on the 7 poor fair bridges to try and move them up to good, and then spend our money on bridges or culverts on the ones that we have to replace, rather than do one bridge every 3 years, and then there's 4 more years that these things deteriorate, the salt gets in them. So is that something that you've looked at, or we can get Mr. Ellis to look at and give us a budget number, and maybe next year we spend $1 million fixing 7 bridges, or $1.5 million fixing them, but then we bring them up so they're good for the next 10 years?
Through your worship to Councilor McClellan, great question, and yes, we have had discussions with Ellis. And you'll be seeing it during budget deliberations. One of the things we're proposing that I'm trying to package together is some engineering done, not just for the replacements. Some of them are reconditioned or refurbishments, which will take them out of the poor and fair, like one of them's in the fair category. Refurbishment, doing it now, will extend the life of that bridge. Yeah. And it'll be at a lower cost as compared to totally replacing it. So yes, we are considering that for future budget considerations that bring forward during budget. One of the other aspects we're looking at, as council's aware, is Drain 13, the big culvert on feeder. That'll be coming forth in a future report, because we did some updating on that, and that'll be coming at probably next meeting for council to consider as well. But that one currently is not a bridge, because their current is only spanning 2.5 meters. It's going to go from 2.5 to 7. So that will have to be included in the bridge report in future. But we're looking at all aspects of not just replacing everything or waiting to replace them. We've done some, in the past couple of years, we've done some minor work to extend the life of them, put some riprap, some scour protection, et cetera. But we will be including in the budget this year a couple of refurbishments as well.
So the next question, Richard, is we have 5 that are in good shape, 1 that's in very good shape, and hopefully if we can get 5 or 6 of these that move up to good. Is there an ongoing process that we should be doing where we go out and we clean these bridges every year, we maybe do a little painting, we seal them up so that the salt can't get them in them? And I noticed the MTO now goes out in the spring and washes the expansion joints and gets rid of all the salt and tries to wash them down in the spring. Is that something, like in your opinion, or Mr. Ellis's opinion, should we be spending 50 grand a year to do that to gain 10 years in the long run on our bridges?
Through your worship to Councilor McClellan, again, yes, we don't have a bridge crew, or we don't have staffing to go out and do proper cleaning and assessments like we potentially could be doing. But a lot of our issues aren't necessarily at the joints. They're actually waterproofing membranes are gone and the structures underneath. So that doesn't really solve the issue. We keep looking at, for instance, like I had a long discussion with Mr. Ellis regarding our 2 fiberglass bridges, for instance, and how we're monitoring. We did some waterproofing and we're trying to monitor them to see how well they extend the life of it. We've discussed things like, going in and sandblasting and painting some of the girders to try and extend the life. Unfortunately, like, he's not a big fan of the fiberglass bridges in the first place, and neither am I, to be honest. But to keep throwing money at them sometimes is just throwing money away in those cases.
I understand.
But a lot of these culverts, for instance, are being looked at yearly anyways. We go in and clean out beaver dams on them, blockages. So we do look after some of them the best we can. But there's not a lot of bridges that we have a lot of joints on, per se.
Yeah. I'm not saying you're not doing a good job. I'm just asking, is there something else, even if you have to sub it out to get it done? If it saves us money in the long run, it's worth doing, right? Rather than leaving it till it crumbles, type thing. But thank you.
Councilor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard, Gents Road on your report shows the bridge type as a slab-on steel girder.
The updated report, I did mention that to them when they submitted it, and after I caught it after submitting it.
Oh, so someone else submitted this, that pie chart and all that stuff?
It was all done through the engineers, but they actually
okay.
stole it from last year instead of updating it to the culverts that we currently have.
Yeah, in light of that, they should know that wrapped has got a W.
Yeah.
I didn't want to bring that up, but, okay, so really, we need another code, which is culverts.
Well, see, they're all considered under the bridge report because anything that spans 3 meters, whether it's a structural bridge like a steel on girder, on slab, or if it's a culvert. If it spans more than 3 meters, it still has to be inspected under the bridge inspection.
Yeah, and
category.
I'm just talking about the descriptor that they use in this report is wrong. That's all I'm saying. If somebody reads this and goes out and looks at it, they're going to say, well, there's 3 culverts there. How is that a slab on a steel girder? That's all.
Yeah.
It's just,
They didn't update their reference
Yeah, okay,
from the
that's
year
fine.
before.
Any other discussion? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, it's maybe a combination question for Richard and drainage. We did a whole search, seizure, and identify all the culverts in the township, correct? So we have that inventory?
Through your worship to Councilor Anderson, yes, we did. We didn't include the municipal drain culverts because they're all captured under municipal drain reports.
So if I continue, Mayor, so I guess, Mark, are there other bridges or considered bridges or greater than 3 meters, whatever, are there other structures that will be picked up that you're aware of going forward in the engineering on drainage? Like Scion Road is one, and we're going to motivate that to a culvert versus bridge. I think it's a cement bridge situation. So are you aware of any others that will be caught in engineering in the near term or not?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. So every Section 78 report looks at each road crossing, whether it's meets this bridge standard or not. So every time we update a drainage report, the roads get reviewed. So those will be updated as we go along. Outside of that, when we do inspections and then do maintenance, we identify culverts that need repair and we have them evaluated by an engineer. So currently we're doing maintenance on the Little Forks drain and identified 2 road crossings that need repair that, based on the engineer's report, don't meet the current specifications, the 3-meter span, but based on what was installed in the 70s after the report, they do meet that standard. So they will be sized appropriately and be brought forward for the capital budget in 2025.
So I might continue through you, Mayor. So have we married the bridge report to the drainage report? Like, are those 2 documents married so that we know where all the water's running and all the little articles that go over top of it?
Through your worship, partially. As Mark indicated, the drain report on the couple of them that we found indicate that the culverts were a certain size that did meet the bridge report or didn't qualify under the bridge inspection report. But somewhere in the 70s, they were changed and upsized, which should have been captured on the bridge report, but due to Mark's inspections and updated reports, we're capturing all that as we go along. So there's I mean, you're looking at, what, 100 and, how many drains now? When you break out the CSW? There's well over 100 drains, so we can't inspect all the drains, but we are, as we go through every drain, whether it be through maintenance, inspection by staff, or by the engineers under Section 78. Then we're starting to capture all those, and we're going to make sure that they're all, as you say, married together, so they'll be captured under that report.
Thank you. It's just that, for me, that would be better record keeping and maintenance tag back to the drain and to the bridge, and we marry that data so that going forward, whenever and whoever would have a better pickup than you guys had to work with. That's all. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor, I understand. I mean, in the past, roadside or road crossings, for instance, were always done under the Drainage Act and Drainage Report, and they were changed at that point. It's just recently that we've adopted the fact that those road crossings are 100% our cost, and they can't be, subsidized by the taxpayers as far as on a drain bill, drain billing goes. So we've now tried to separate those costs. They're town costs anyways, and we're capturing them under the large culvert budget line item that we introduced a couple of years ago.
Councillor Van Vliet?
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Mark, when we do the drainage sort of synopsis, are there things like typical, this one floods more than that one, and is that sort of database included, or is that just as Mother Nature lets it happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So there isn't a database that I run that specifies which flood the most or anything like that. We have an active maintenance program that's based on a 10-year cycle, but we do remedy that with complaints and what we see in the field. So if we are observing more flooding in a certain area, then we put it up on our list. But when an engineer evaluates each drainage system, they design it to a flooding standard. So some of our older reports, which is a significant amount of them, they don't specify what the rain event is that they're designed to. Current modern municipal drains are designed to a higher standard than than historically. So as we update the drains, those flooding options should go down.
Okay, through you, Mayor. So just so that I understand this, then, the engineering reports and/or whatever, you will know the flow capacity, which is why you would understand to put a bigger culvert than a smaller culvert. Like, is that how that sort of works out?
Correct, yes. The engineer does all of that. So each road crossing would be designed to typically a 10-year storm, if it's a road crossing, or higher than that, a 10, 50, 100-year storm. And an engineer does those calculations based on the entire watershed.
Right, okay. It's just that our costing for culvert sizing and stuff comes out of that, so I just wonder how we get to the end dollar. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Wainfleet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, my concern was, I already emailed you about this, was at the road crossings, not the bridges, probably mostly the road crossings, because they're almost every single gravel road. Are they clearly marked? Like, I pretty much know where most of them are, because I learned to drive here. But anybody new coming into the township may not know, and some of them have a cement abutment, some of them don't, you're just going over. Are they all clearly marked? Because there's been so much growth this year, like green growth.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Vliet, all our, during our roadside safety study a couple of years ago, a couple of them were identified, and we did put new hazard markers at those locations. The new standard, obviously, and the new designs for bridges, most of the time include guide rails now. Previously, they didn't do that. They'd left a concrete abutment sticking up out of the ground. So they were always identified strictly with a hazard marker if there's enough room to pass two vehicles through them. We do monitor those on an ongoing basis, but yes, the growing season this year technically didn't stop. So we've been really busy cutting and monitoring. We're almost finished our second cut, and we've already started pushing back some of the roads with the arm. We put the arm on them already, and we're already starting to mow back some of the back sides of the ditches from the growth that is actually, coming above it again, or closing it in again.
Councilor McCollum, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is to Richard. When we're doing, and Mark, I guess, when we're doing these drain crossings, road crossings, so Gents Road, we went with giant culverts. They're very expensive. Is there any way that we can get those, so instead of 3 culverts, we put 5 culverts in? Maybe it's a little less expensive. You probably have to deal with the MPCA on creeks and stuff like that, but what's on an actual municipal drain, I'm just asking, can we, I know 2 3-foot culverts don't do what 1 6-foot culvert does. I understand that part of it, right? It's just can't get the flow through it. But maybe 4-foot are 2/3 the price, or 1/3 the price of a 6-foot culvert because they're so big, they're hard to move, or a 9-foot culvert. So is that something we can look at to try and cut some of those costs back, right? And like, we spent shy of $1 million at Gents Road. Is there something we could have done differently, right?
Yeah. Through your worship to Councillor McClellan, yes, we are always considering that. There's a lot of things to take in consideration, including the cover on the pipes. We don't want to keep raising the roads to make a big hump to get the larger culverts in. But we're also restricted sometimes to the width of the actual creek bed itself. But yeah, we've always, and Mark is well aware that we're trying to get away from these bridge structures. Now that we've gotten away with it on one, we're going to try moving forward on changing the rest of them to culverts, and whether we put 2 or 3 in, similar to Gents, or if we can get away with smaller ones and have the effective cover on the pipes for stability. We definitely look at that, and that'll be something that we always discuss with the engineers before they finalize any of their reports.
Are there any other discussions from members of council? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
This might be moving forward, and I'm not going to discuss budget, but when we get to budget, This is just to my fellow counselors, and I don't know whether I'm sorry, Mallory, it's a bit of a shock for you there. I'm just wondering if we sort of look at building in an incremental dollar factor, sort of like we kind of did with the fire hall. If we don't do that already, maybe we should consider that, so that going forward, we sort of have a rolling funding model for bridges built into our base budget.
Yeah, so through the mayor to the councillor, essentially we do, it's just not outlined as bridge, just because there's not enough money. So we have to prioritize in each year, because a road might be higher priority than a bridge in that year. So like our capital contributions and our infrastructure levy, like staff meet internally with their own departments, and then SLT meets, and that before it even comes to council, to kind of prioritize amongst all of the departments asked to see, and based on all the reports from engineers and actual studies, like what do we really need to do? What can we not put off? What can we invest a little bit here? And that's how we prioritize those infrastructure dollars, to make sure that we're getting the most value, we're reducing our risk in the biggest way. But if we can't really, if we bucketed 50,000 every year, we'd never be able to replace a bridge probably before I retire, not at 50 grand a year anyway. So this way it allows us to kind of allocate money a little bit more freely in terms of what the immediate needs are, so that we can assess that. Because again, I could make a contribution to any different reserve, but it would be unaffordable.
If I might continue through you, Mayor. So is it feasible, and I know this is preemptive to the budget, is it feasible to set a percentage of surplus towards roads and bridges?
Through the mayor to councillor, the report at the end of the year with whatever surplus, if there is a surplus, comes back to council for approval with our recommendations. Generally, we like to guide it back to the area that generated the surplus, because oftentimes it's just a timing issue. So let's say Richard couldn't get his contract out because nobody bid on it, so we're going to wait till the spring. That would generate a false surplus. It doesn't mean that we don't need to repair that road. So we would allocate that into a roads reserve, so that he still has that money, so he can go out and tender that again in the new year, so that we can still replace the road that we identified as a need. I don't know if that helped or made that worse.
Yeah, it does. I'm just wondering how we can redirect surplus. It may not be that we replace a bridge for $600,000-700,000, but it might be that a 10% of a surplus might move in here and take a fair bridge that has 115 to recoup on it, to move it from a 1 to 5 out to a 12. And so would we not look at moving some of that money out, so that we move a bridge along? Just changing the replacement rehab category.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to run, the math around in my head, that's all.
For sure. So through the mayor to the councillor, I think this conversation is happening because currently we have a bridge report in front of us, but when we have a roads needs study in front of us, we're going to have a different conversation, because there's just as many needs and just as many poor conditioned roads. So it is a balancing act. We don't put the surplus back into operating. It gets allocated back into capital, or a reserve that's used for capital at some point. So but it's a balancing act. One year, roads might win over bridges. The next year, the fire hall might win over 2 roads because they're still in good condition and not poor. So there's not enough money to fix everything that's in poor condition. So we just have to prioritize and balance based on the best information we have at the time when we create our budget.
So if I might continue, Mayor, so am I hearing, Mallory, that surplus does not go into the operating side? That surplus should go into the capital side? Would that not be rehab, rebuild, and fix bridges? I'm right on that, am I?
So through the mayor to the councillor, I won't say it never goes into the operating, but only if it was specifically budgeted for something in operating. Like if we knew that we needed to do an official plan review, and we had a consultant for that, and we budgeted for it in the operating side, but it didn't happen in this year because we weren't ready yet, we would still allocate that and we would put it back in, like, we've already levied the taxes, so we're not going to levy it again the next year. So we'll save that so that we can use it for the official plan review the following year. But in most circumstances, if we have, like, let's say Richard doesn't spend as much money on gravel or salt or something like that, we'll put it back into infrastructure and it will go back into capital for the following year.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? No, seeing none. Okay, then I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, we're going to move into the review of correspondence. We have 2 items of correspondence on the agenda for consideration this evening. The first one being correspondence item C409, respecting the amendments to the Municipal Elections Act. Councilor Anderson, you requested to pull this first item of correspondence. Do you wish to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that correspondence item 409 from the Township of the Lake of Bays respecting amendments to the Municipal Election Act be supported by the Council of Wainfleet. Thank you.
Right. Do we have a seconder? Councilor Van Fleet? Any discussion? Seeing none? Oh, Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Just a comment for, we do have a member in the gallery, thank you, and for people on video attendance. The reason I sort of brought this forward is because the AMOTC looked at this and thinks there may be some need to look at a revision or whatever. And the Municipal Act itself is 30 years old, so it's long enough in the tooth that it should probably be looked at. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to correspondence item C417, respecting the proclamation request for Christian Heritage Month. So I have a motion that the correspondence item C2024-417, respecting a proclamation request for Christian Heritage Month, be received and supported. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Anderson, Councilor Gilmore, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, we're going to move into bylaws. So bylaws, I have a motion that bylaw number 40/2024, being a bylaw to provide abandonment of a section of the Biederman Drain for drainage works in the Township of Wainfleet in the region of Niagara, be read and passed this first day of October 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Gilmore, Councilor Anderson, any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, are there any notices of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none. So we do have additional items for closed session this evening. So at this time, I'm going to have a motion that the council now move into closed session to discuss item under section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board members, one item, an HR matter, and the minutes of the closed meetings of council held September 10th, 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan? Councilor Van Fleet? Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? I was just checking, make sure everybody's on there. Okay. Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. So we'll now move into closed.